Alfred Schnittke was a Soviet and German composer. Schnittke's early music shows the strong influence of Dmitri Shostakovich. He developed a polystylistic technique in works such as the epic Symphony No.1 and his first concerto grosso. In the 1980s, Schnittke's music began to become more widely known abroad with the publication of his second and third string quartets and the string trio, the Ballet Peregrine, the third, fourth, and fifth symphonies, and the viola and first cello concertos. As his health deteriorated, Schnittke's music started to abandon much of the extroversion of his polystylism and retreated into a more withdrawn, bleak style. Life and career. Schnittke's father, Harry Viktorovich Schnittke, was Jewish and born in Frankfurt. He moved to the USSR in 1927 and worked as a journalist and translator from the Russian language into German. His mother, Maria Yosefovna Schnittke, was a Volga German born in Russia. Schnittke's paternal godmother, T. Abramovna Katz, was a philologist, translator, and editor of German language literature. Alfred Schnittke was born in Engels in the Volga German Republic of the RSFSR, Soviet Union. He began his musical education in 1946 in Vienna, where his father had been posted. It was in Vienna, Schnittke's biographer Alexander Ivashkin writes, where he fell in love with music, which is part of life, part of history and culture, part of the past which is still alive. Quote, "I felt every moment there," the composer wrote, "to be a link of the historical chain. All was multidimensional, the past represented a world of ever-present ghosts, and I was not a barbarian without any connections, but the conscious bearer of the task in my life." Schnittke's experience in Vienna gave him a certain spiritual experience and discipline for his future professional activities. It was Mozart and Schubert, not Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff, whom he kept in mind as a reference point in terms of taste, manner and style. This reference point was essentially classical, but never too blatant. In 1948, the family moved to Moscow. Schnittke completed his graduate work in composition at the Moscow Conservatory in 1961 and taught there from 1962 to 1972. Evgeny Golubev was one of his composition teachers. Thereafter, he earned his living chiefly by composing film scores, producing nearly 70 scores in 30 years. Schnittke converted to Christianity and possessed deeply held mystic beliefs, which influenced his music. Schnittke and his music were often viewed suspiciously by the Soviet bureaucracy. His first symphony was effectively banned by the Composers' Union. After he abstained from a Composers' Union vote in 1980, he was banned from traveling outside of the USSR. In 1985, Schnittke suffered a stroke that left him in a coma. He was declared clinically dead on several occasions, but recovered and continued to compose. In 1990, Schnittke left the Soviet Union and settled in Hamburg. His health remained poor, however. He suffered several more strokes before his death on August 3, 1998, in Hamburg, at the age of 63. He was buried, with state honors, at the Novodevichy Cemetery in Moscow, where many other prominent Russian composers, including Dmitri Shostakovich, are interred. Music. Schnittke's early music shows the strong influence of Dmitri Shostakovich, but after the visit of the Italian composer Luigi Nono to the USSR, he took up the serial technique in works such as music for piano and chamber orchestra. However, Schnittke soon became dissatisfied with what he termed the puberty rites of serial self-denial. Quote, He created a new style which has been called polystylism, where he juxtaposed and combined music of various styles past and present. He once wrote, "The goal of my life is to unify serious music and light music, even if I break my neck in doing so." His first concert work to use the polystylistic technique was the second violin sonata, quasi una sonata. He experimented with techniques in his film work, as shown by much of the sonata appearing first in his score for the animation short The Glass Harmonica. He continued to develop the polystylistic technique in works such as the epic First Symphony and First Concerto Grosso. Other works were more stylistically unified, such as his piano quintet, written in memory of his recently deceased mother. In the 1980s, Schnittke's music began to become more widely known abroad, thanks in part to the work of émigré Soviet artists such as the violinists Gideon Kremer and Mark Lubotsky. Despite constant illness, he produced a large amount of music, including important works such as the second and third string quartets and the string trio, the Faust cantata, which he later incorporated in his opera Historia von D. Johann Faustin, the ballet Peer Gynt, the third, fourth and fifth symphonies, and the viola and first cello concertos. As his health deteriorated, Schnittke started to abandon much of the extroversion of his polystylism and retreated into a more withdrawn, bleak style, quite accessible to the lay listener. The fourth quartet and sixth, seventh and eighth symphonies are good examples of this. Some Schnittke scholars, such as Gerard McBurney, have argued that it is the late works that will ultimately be the most influential parts of Schnittke's output. After a stroke in 1994 left him almost completely paralyzed, Schnittke largely ceased to compose. He did complete some short works in 1997 and also a Ninth Symphony. Its score was almost unreadable because he had written it with great difficulty with his left hand. The Ninth Symphony was first performed on the 19th of June 1998 in Moscow in a version deciphered, but also arranged by Gennady Rozhdestvinsky, who conducted the premiere. After hearing a tape of the performance, Schnittke indicated he wanted it withdrawn. After he died, though others worked to decipher the score, Nikolai Korndorf died before he could complete the task, which was continued and completed by Alexander Raskitov. In Raskitov's version, the three orchestral movements of Schnittke's symphony may be followed by a choral fourth, which is Raskitov's own Nunc Dimittis. This version was premiered in Dresden, Germany, on June 16, 2007. Andrei Borico also has a version of the symphony. Selected works: Orchestra Symphonies, Symphony No.0, Symphony No.1, Symphony No.2, St. Florian, Symphony No.3, Symphony No.4, Symphony No.5, Symphony No.6, Symphony No.7, Symphony No.8, Symphony No.9. Other orchestral pianissimo. In Memoriam, Passacaglia, Gogol Suite, Ritual ein Sommernachtstraum, Symphonic Prelude, for Liverpool, Concerto und Works Violin and Orchestra, Concerto No.1 for Violin and Orchestra, Concerto No. 2 for Violin and Chamber Orchestra, Concerto No.3 for Violin and Chamber Orchestra, Concerto No.4 for Violin and Orchestra, Piano and Orchestra, Poemi for Piano and Orchestra, Concerto for Piano and Orchestra, Music for Piano and Chamber Orchestra, Concerto for Piano and String Orchestra, Concerto for Piano, Four Hands and Chamber Orchestra, to Victoria Postnikova and Irina Schnittke. Cello and Orchestra, Concerto No.1 for Cello and Orchestra, Concerto No. 2 for Cello and Orchestra, to M. Rostropovich. Viola and Orchestra, Concerto for Viola and Orchestra, Monologue for Viola and Strings. Concerto for viola and small orchestra. Other instruments and orchestra. Accordion concerto, Lost Work, double concerto for oboe, harp, and string orchestra to Heinz Holliger, Ursula Holliger and the Zagreb soloists. Concerto Grosso No.1 for 2 violins, prepared piano, harpsichord and 21 strings. Concerto Grosso No.1 for flute, oboe, harpsichord, prepared piano and string orchestra. Concerto Grosso No. 2 for violin, cello and triple symphony orchestra. Concerto Grosso No. 3 for 2 violins, harpsichord, celesta, piano and 14 strings. Concerto Grosso No. 4 for violin, oboe, harpsichord and orchestra. Concerto Grosso No. 5 for violin, piano and orchestra. 3. Allegro vivace, triple concerto for violin, viola, cello and string orchestra. Concerto for 3. Concerto Grosso No. 6 for piano, violin and string orchestra. 5 fragments to pictures of Hieronymus Bosch for tenor, violin, trombone, harpsichord, timpani and string orchestra to Vladimir Spivakov. Choral music Nagasaki, oratorio. Voices of Nature, Requiem, Minnesang for 52 voices. Side Nocturne und Wache. 3 sacred hymns, concerto for mixed chorus, psalms of repentance, penitential psalms. Chamber music Sonata No. 1 for violin and piano, dialogue for violoncello and 7 instruments. String Quartet No. 1. Serenade for violin, clarinet, double bass, piano and percussion. Sonata No. 2 for violin and piano, quasi una sonata. Canon in Memoriam Igor Stravinsky for string quartet, suite in the old style, for violin and piano, harpsichord. Gratulations Rondo for violin and piano. Hymn I for cello, harp and timpani. Hymn 2 for cello and double bass. Hymn 3 for cello, bassoon, harpsichord and bells at timpani. Hymn IV for cello, bassoon, double bass, harpsichord, harp, timpani and bells. Prelude in Memoriam Dmitri Shostakovich for 2 violins. Cantus Perpetuus for keyboard instrument and percussion. Quintet for piano and strings. Stillnacht for violin and piano. Sonata No. 1 for violoncello and piano. Still music for violin and violoncello. Homage to Stravinsky, Prokofiev and Shostakovich for piano 6 hands. String Quartet No. 2. Septet for flute, 2 clarinets, violin, viola, cello and harpsichord or organ. Course of Life for 4 metronomes, piano and 3 percussionists, to Wilfred Brenneker and John Cage. String Quartet No. 3. Sound and Echo for trombone and organ. String Trio shares a theme with the Cello Concerto No. 1 from 1986. String Quartet No. 4. Madrigal in Memoriam Oleg Kagan for solo violin and violoncello. Musica Nostalgica for violoncello and piano. Peer Gynt. Epilogue for violoncello, piano and tape. Sonata No. 2 for violoncello and piano. Sonata No. 3 for violin and piano. Solo instrumental fugue for solo violin. 6 preludes for piano. Variations for piano. Improvisation and fugue for piano. Variations on 1 chord for piano. Potok electronic composition. 8 pieces for piano dedicated to his son Andrei. Cadenza to Mozart's Piano Concerto in C minor, K491. 2 cadenzas to Beethoven's Violin Concerto in D major, Op. 61, for solo violin, 10 violins and timpani. In Memoriam Igor Stravinsky, Sergei Prokofiev and Dmitri Shostakovich for piano 6 hands. 2 short pieces for organ. A Paganini for solo violin. Cadenza to Mozart's Piano Concerto in C major, KV 503. 2 cadenzas to Mozart's Bassoon Concerto in B-flat major KV 191. Piano Sonata No. 1. Klingende Buxtehude for solo cello. Madrigal in Memoriam Oleg Kagan, first version for violin solo. Madrigal in Memoriam Oleg Kagan, second version for cello solo. 3 fragments for harpsichord. 5 aphorisms for piano. Piano Sonata No. 2. Cadenzas to Mozart's Piano Concerto in B-flat major KV 39, for the 90th birthday of Alfred Schnittke, for viola solo. Piano Sonata No. 3. Improvisation for solo cello. Sonatina for piano 4 hands. Opera's Life with an Idiot, opera in 2 acts. Libretto by Viktor Yerofeyev. Historia von D. Johann Faustin, opera in 3 acts and an epilogue. Libretto by Jörg Morgan and Alfred Schnittke. Geraldo, opera in 7 tableaux, a prologue and an epilogue. Libretto by Richard Blechaker. Ballets Labyrinths, ballet in 5 episodes. Libretto by Vladimir Vasilyev. Der Gelbklang, ballet suite. Libretto by Vasily Kandinsky. Sketches, ballet in 1 act. Choreographic Fantasia by Andrei Petrov after the themes by Nikolai Gogol. Peer Gynt, ballet in 3 acts by John Neumeier based on Henrik Ibsen's drama. Soundtracks Adventures of a Dentist, film directed by Elem Klimov. Commissar, film directed by Alexander Askeldov, based on one of Vasily Grossman's first short stories, In the Town of Berdichev. The Glass Harmonica, animated film directed by Andrei Kurzanovsky. Seagull, film directed by Yuli Karasik. Belarusian Station, film directed by Andrei Smirnov. Sport, film directed by Elem Klimov. You Are an I, film directed by Larissa Shepardko. Butterfly, animated film directed by Andrei Kurzanovsky. Agony, 2-part film directed by Elem Klimov. The Ascent, film directed by Larissa Shepardko. The Story of an Unknown Actor, film directed by Alexander Zaki. Little Tragedies, 3-part TV film directed by Mikhail Schweitzer. Equipage, film directed by Alexander Mitter. Skazka Stranství, film directed by Alexander Mitter. Dead Souls, 5-part TV miniseries directed by Mikhail Schweitzer. The Last Days of St. Petersburg. The Master and Margarita, film directed by Yuri Kara.